So what's interesting about my session today, can I get the slides in the middle too, please? I'm actually not really going to talk about search. I found it a really good strategy. If I'm talking about technology, when I'm talking with an audience of technologists, I talk about marketing. When I'm talking with an audience of marketers, I talk about technology. It seems to work very, very well. So that said, let me give you a little context on me. I'm a professor at the Kellogg School of Management for the last 12 years. Managing partner of a consulting company called Agile Insights for the last several years. And there's a book. The book, Data-Driven Marketing, was very fortunate. It won the Best Book of the Year award last year by the American Marketing Association. And you'll see it as a photograph up there. I'm kind of looking happy, okay? So just to put me in context, I told my wife I'm going to get my photograph taken for this book, and she says, but Mark, when you smile for a photograph, you look like an idiot. So I went to get the photograph taken. I'm like, you know what, I got to have a good photograph here, so tell me a joke. Make me laugh. So this photograph is the result of this joke. What's the difference between an Irish wedding and an Irish funeral? And the answer is one less drunk. Okay? So here's my plan. I've now got about 25 minutes. So I figured 5 ideas in 25 minutes. I think that should work, okay? I'm actually going to share some old examples, which for you are dark ages. You know, think like 2005, okay? So there's going to be some old examples. There's going to be really old, 1775, okay? But then there'll be some state-of-the-art stuff like eBay like last week, okay? So I want to start with motivation. I want to talk about the marketing divide. And then I want to give you 3 big trends that are fundamentally impacting not just search, but marketing, okay? And I want to position this presentation as the bigger picture of marketing and there's search that fits into that, and to give you some insights that can help you better perform as a search marketer in a bigger marketing organization, okay? So I want to talk about big data. I want to talk about agile marketing, which is essentially multi-channel marketing with a twist. And then social squared. You know, what's the next level of social? What's the big trend that we're seeing on the academic side that is starting to fundamentally impact things that you do as you start to analyze social networks and optimize your marketing? So that's the plan. Now, at Kellogg, I get to meet a lot of chief marketing officers, which is really cool. It's a great job. I got to tell you, this is what I hear. Here's the CMO right here. Here's the CEO. That's the board in the background. It is a tough job, a tough job. Show me the value of what you do. Show me the value. You heard the introductions. I heard it said several times, the economy sucks, okay? Actually, it more than sucks, frankly, all right? 2008 was an absolute meltdown on the order of magnitude scale of what caused the Great Depression. Same size, same impact. There were 2 fundamental differences, however. They actually bailed out the banks, so they didn't do that back in 1929. They let 70% of the banks fail. And this was the first time ever there was a global economic stimulus on a scale that has never been seen before, okay? And additionally, by the way, they put interest rates down this time around. Back in 1929, they put the interest rates up because they wanted to stamp out that risky lending thing. So what does this all mean? Well, we're sitting here in almost 2013, and I got to tell you, you guys are looking good. You feeling good? Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm looking good, right? But you know, in 2 weeks, there's like a fiscal cliff. It's the real deal, okay? And by the way, the odds are we're going to go over. Odds are, okay? It's going to get really, really ugly, but by March again, we'll all be smiling and looking good, okay? So going back to that, the insight here around, the economy sucks, all that kind of thing is, why is that? Why is it? Well, the why is that global stimulus back 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago, it's like chemotherapy. The medication can kill the patient. That's where we are right now. So you're seeing inflation is going to start going up worldwide. You're going to see budget squeezed. You got to raise taxes. That kills growth. It's ugly. So what's the point? Why should you care? So insight number one, we're living in very, very difficult times for any company, okay? As a marketer, showing your value becomes incredibly important. And by the way, markets are not made when everything is going great. Markets are made in the downturn. That's what leaders do. So leaders understand that bad things are about to happen, and instead of actually cutting their marketing budget, they will increase the marketing budget, which is an interesting insight. And there's research data to support very significant performance gains for companies that do that. All right, second insight. This is research I did at Kellogg, 252 firms, capturing some $53 billion worth of annual marketing spending. There's lots and lots of insight in the research, but I just want to give you one. It's a difference between how the leaders and how the laggards invest their marketing dollars. So first of all, if you ask a chief marketing officer, or maybe you ask somebody down the hall, how do we invest our marketing budget? Here's what you most often hear. You most often hear, well, we spend this much on search, we spend this much on direct mail, we spend this much on TV, we spend this much on print. You get the idea, okay? My point is that taxonomy is worthless because it doesn't tell you anything about what the marketing was supposed to do. So I asked the question a little bit differently. I said, well, how much money do you spend on demand generation marketing? This is marketing to get somebody to buy now. Click buy, search, okay? So search is an example of that. But it also could be a sale, it could be an event, it could be a new product launch, okay? You get the idea? How much you spend on branding? I think you all know what branding is, the big ads and such. How much you spend on building customer relationships, building customer equity. How much do you spend on shaping markets? So by the way, there's a whole bunch of placards around the room here. That's marketing to shape the market of people that do search, okay? So, and then finally, infrastructure and capabilities to support the marketing, the data-driven marketing activities, okay? So without going into all the details, here's the insight. Here's the answer. It turns out that the leaders spend more on average on marketing overall, about 20% more. But what I'm interested in is on a relative basis. Do you see that the difference between the leaders, and I'm going to call them the losers, is 10 points? They spend 10 points less on demand generation marketing. Now, of course, overall they spend more, so maybe on average they spend about the same amount, but as a portfolio basis, they spend about 10 points less. You see that they spend about twice as much on branding. And actually, because they spend more money overall, they spend a lot more on branding, okay? You see they spend a lot more on customer equity. And finally, they spend 60 points more on infrastructure to support data-driven marketing, tools, training, all that good stuff, okay? So why is this? What's going on here? The short answer is that there is a very fundamental power of a brand. Brand means that in a purchasing cycle, brand is, the first thing, like if you think premium automobile, what do you think? Mercedes. I mean, it says Mercedes. If he's in the market to buy a Mercedes, he's going to go search Mercedes, probably the first thing, to find out where the heck the dealer is, okay? That was a brand linkage that made that happen very early on in that purchasing cycle, okay? So branding, demand generation. The problem with demand generation is demand generation drives revenues, but it does not drive profitability. Because here's the problem. If your search word costs $8, but the product you're selling only costs $5, you're going to lose. Now, if that product you're selling is a car or a vacation to Paris, that's a different story because that's a high-value thing. The search argument works really, really well. So my point is this. Going after demand generation marketing, just ad hoc doing a lot of search stuff and events and sales, is a recipe for disaster. The leaders are different. They are very systematically analyzing their portfolio. They are very systematically making decisions about brand versus not, demand, and so forth. Okay? All right. Idea number 3. How am I doing? Oh, man, I'm ahead of the curve. Excellent. We're only 10 minutes in, and we've already done 2 ideas. Good. Big data. You know, it's interesting. Anybody here ever heard of big data? It's like, yeah. You know, it's funny. I also, I spent several years on the staff in electrical engineering, computer science at UC Berkeley. So it turns out I'm a hardcore nerd. It's the same stuff. It's you know, 20 years ago, it was big back then, you know. Now it's just a bit bigger, okay? I mean, yeah, it's a lot bigger, but the computers are a lot faster. So what's the big deal? So how would you know big data if you saw it? What does it look like? So let me give you an example. Now, I said some of my examples are not the newest examples. They're not the coolest examples. But this is a really good example, okay? So maybe it's hard to see in this room, but it says the power of 10, the 10 key new pieces for your perfect spring wardrobe. This is a flyer. It comes in the mail. It's like, you know, 10 pages, 4-color graphics, okay, full color. Leaf through it, okay? Who is it for? Who is it for? Is it for you? You know, you said, man, I said, no. Why not? Yeah, you know. Who's it for? Come on, you got to help me out. This is an interactive portion here. Who's it for? Help me out. Yeah. No. You don't get to delegate. You don't get to delegate. No, make a decision. You're all professional managers. You get to make decisions for a living. Somebody here, some of the ladies. Who's it for? Middle-aged mom. Who said that? How old is she? How old is she? Yeah, the woman. I want to know how old the woman is. The woman. Yeah. 38. How did you know that? Yes, it's really interesting. You saw something in the dimness of this room where the average guy is like, man, she's looking pretty good. So you said she's nearly 40. How did you know she's nearly 40?
Because I'm a woman.
Yeah, so here's a pointer. Can you point to it for me? The little red thing on there, but watch you don't take anybody's eye out there. Oh, no. Come back. So what do you see on her face that tells you she's nearly 40? Yeah, the ladies zoned in, man. They're wrinkles. And it's like dark in here. You're like, man, 40 years old. Hey, look at this. Look at this. Men's XXL and more. What's that about? She got the fat husband at home. Okay? So you're reading through this. There's all this men's clothing at the end. What's that about? Why is there men's clothing in this woman's Target? She's the buyer. That's right. I'm married 21 years. It's like I got a professional fashion consultant at home. True story. I have little kids, and those of you who had little kids, and Rob Griffin is going through this right now. You find out real quickly that you cannot go to like the clothing store and leisurely shop with your 2 little kids. It just doesn't work. So I started to go and shop independently. Now this is a story that I've told across continents, and apparently it rings true. The man goes, and this is kind of out of the norm, that he goes and buys his own clothes. Shortly thereafter, there is a fashion show that happens up in the bedroom. So I come out. I'm all proud of myself. It wasn't this suit. It was a different suit. I got my suit on, okay? I come out. I kind of do a turn. I'm like, what do you think? She goes, what were you thinking? I'm like, what, man? I'm looking good. She's like, there's no pleat in the pants. I'm a guy. I'm like, there's a difference? I'm like, there's no pleat. She's like, you got short legs and a fat ass. It's not going to work for you. So the power of 10. 10. Ladies, how does that work? The 10 perfect things. Who needs the 10 perfect things? How does that work? Come on, ladies, you got to help me out here. Guys are clueless. They're like, man, I got one shirt, I got a suit, I'm good. 10 perfect things. What? Yeah, what is that? Mix and match. Mix and match. You guys are like, what? Mix and match, right? 10 perfect things, I got 1,000 outfits, right? So, who needs that? Well, busy people need that, okay? Professional people may need that. You look inside this flyer, the average price on the next page is like $100, and it's like Lands' End, targeted affluent people, okay? Affluent, busy, married with kids, 40 years old. Came to my house exactly when my wife and I were 40 years old. She's sitting on a couch. She's looking at this. She's like, I like this. I like that. I don't like this. You know what? She didn't pick up the phone and call right away. In a week, she did pick up the phone and she did call. By the way, my wife is a professional. She's the chair of engineering at Arizona State University on the Polytechnic campus. She's really, really busy. For her, this was a, wow, that's exactly what I need. This is big data right here, okay? By the way, let me show you what they sent me. You already got a preview. That's what they sent me. All right. All right, this is what it is. So, as you well know, Lands' End owns Sears. Sears is a company that, as you also know, is not doing so well. Lambert and all that, the buyout, Kmart, yada, yada. This is a company that's over 100 years old. You know, the challenge is all the stores are in the cities because 100 years ago, that's where you put your stores. You know, nowadays, you know, we put them way outside the cities. So that said, you realize that Sears is still the #1 retailer of kitchen appliances in the United States? #1. Washing machines, still #1. Well, why I love this, and by the way, part of the thing about getting good examples is access to real data. Here's real data, okay? 250 million catalogs a year, targeting 14, 18 million customers, spread over 18 separate mailings, generating incremental sales of $900 million a year. It's kind of a lot, okay? So when I'm going to do big data and analytics, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to tell you what it means. It means I'm going to segment the market. By the way, most of you, if you're in marketing, I've got a book on your bookshelf by Phil Kotler that says Marketing Management. By the way, that book is why Kellogg is the #1 school in the world in marketing. At the end of every chapter, there are problems. How many market segments are in those problems? Anybody know? I'll give you a hint. 3. Why? The book was written 40 years ago. They didn't have computers back then. It was always a high, medium, and low segment. Okay? What is big data? Big data fundamentally is understanding your customers. We talk a lot about one-to-one marketing. Nobody really does one-to-one marketing. What we do is we define microsegments. Okay, you define microsegments. We're going to do targeting based on value. That's exactly what they did. 25 distinct segments based on a robust set of variables, and then customizing the marketing media to those segments. So it used to be everybody in the Midwest got the flyer. Everybody in the South got the flyer. The Midwest people and the people in the South, they got different flyers, but everybody got the same flyers in that big geography, okay? What's different now? The difference is now we're going to customize the marketing. So, for example, there's a segment, 40-year-old, professional, female, affluent, married, with kids. That's a segment, okay? There is a targeted flyer printed and mailed to that person, okay? What happens? Now, this is actual data for Sears, the catalog, to get you to come into the store. But what happens? Increase of mailer revenue of $215 million a year. That's a lot, okay? 1% improvement in number of trips generated. 5% improvement in average purchase dollars per trip. They come more, they spend more. 2% improvement in gross margin. Is that a little bit or a lot? This is retail, man. That's like a lot. It's a lot. Gross margins are like less than 10%. 10% to 12%. That's a lot. This is big data right here. Okay? Taking marketing that frankly is not very sophisticated, flyers in the mail, and getting quantum leap performance gains. Tell you what, you do this like in digital, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable, okay? So think analytics. What is analytics and big data? Fundamentally, it's looking at very large data sets to do microsegmentation and then doing very fine-grained targeting that's actually across, ideally in your world, a multi-channel setting. It's not just search, it's digital, it's impression. Maybe there's a direct marketing component, who knows? But quantum leap improvement in take rates to offers. What happens? The customer sees the ad, and the ideal is you want to get, wow, that's exactly what I need. Click. That's what you want, okay? That's targeted. Now, of course, that's an older example. Let me give you an example from last week. eBay. I got to get my facts straight here. You realize they got the biggest database on the planet. 10 petabytes of data. 10 petabytes. We're talking 108 million active buyers, 350 million items for sale, 250 million searches a day, 2 billion queries a day, 2 billion queries a day, 75 billion database calls a day, 75 billion. That stuff I just showed you for the print, eBay is doing that stuff. They're doing it every day. Big data analysis. They're going through that data thing. They're running models that are basically your decision tree type stuff, your SaaS analytic type tools, and so forth, and doing very hyper targeting to very dramatically increase the propensity to buy for high value customers. That's what they really want. All right, how are we doing? All right, I got 10 minutes. I got 2 ideas. So, idea number 4, agile marketing. I'm just going to do this one real quick. You don't need to know anything about this marketing campaign other than it was $18.5 million. It was a customer perception changing marketing campaign. Here's the bottom line. You can't read that. Well, you can't read that, but that's fine, right? We're in a 2-day session where there's all these very fancy tools and such, and believe me, they are very, very good tools. But by the way, for me, it's all about process. Process first, tool second. So what I want to share with you here is just one example. Here's a multi-channel marketing campaign, $18.5 million, tracked on one Excel spreadsheet. Now, by the way, it turns out where did the data come from? It's actually DoubleClick data. This is before Google bought DoubleClick and before Microsoft then went on a wild ride and bought Equanti, right? But takeaways. Here are all the different marketing channels up in here. By the way, search is a really small piece of this particular campaign, but that's not the point, okay? Here's all of those marketing channels. Here's the clicks, okay? This is then by week, 10 weeks. What's the insight? So it's a multi-channel picture, view of this campaign. The insight is this. They're looking at this data at the end of the first week, okay? And they're looking at that number, 439. You don't need to know what it is. But they're looking at the number and they say, you know what? If we keep doing what we're doing, this campaign is going to fail. It's not working. What's going on is, well, it turns out you go in and do some analytics inside to figure out where the clicks are coming from. The immediate action rate actually kind of sucks, it turns out. And so what's happening is all this marketing channel that's going to the website, there's too many calls to action. They simplify it all down. What happens? End of the second week, they change the campaign. Now, you cannot see these numbers. I'm standing right next to it. I'm having a tough time seeing them. But what you see is, here you've got like 400, 250 signups. It jumps up to like 1,200, 1,500, 1,700, 3,200. My point is this. Measured performance of the campaign over its life, 600% improvement. 600%. Okay? What just happened? This is what I call agile marketing. Because here's the thing. If you measure before the campaign and you measure after the campaign, that measurement can have absolutely no impact on that campaign. You have to measure on a time scale shorter than the campaign. In this case, it's weekly data. And I hear a lot, well, we need real-time data. You need real-time. No, you don't. You don't need real-time data. You need near-time data. Near-time. In this case, weekly data, I'm able to act and change the campaign on the fly. That action is a 600% improvement. Recent example, this is Porsche North America, exactly the same kind of thing. They've got a multi-channel strategy. They're doing search, they're doing digital impression advertising. They're doing Wall Street Journal print media. They've got a text messaging campaign, a whole bunch of texting, all those multi-channels with the goal of incenting test drives for the cars. What do they find? They find they're 2 weeks into this. You know what? The southern part of the United States is not getting enough test drives. They change the campaign. So I think what I find a lot with marketing organizations, I think search is different because I think in search you're more programmed to do more like daily, weekly optimization kind of things. But just be aware that the bigger picture marketing organization doesn't usually do this. Okay? So you can help them do this is a big insight. And that can profoundly impact performance. All right, last idea. Social. Social is just so interesting, right? We got like 1 billion Facebook pages now or something crazy. So what's the deal here? You know, if you look at the fraction of digital marketing budgets that go to social, I think it's like 2% or something. Why? Because we haven't figured it out yet. It's not figured out. But that's okay. That's why I tell my MBA students this is the most exciting time to be in marketing. Because you get to figure it out, okay? But here's an insight that I'm seeing that is kind of becoming a trend and I think is going to become particularly important is, and I'm seeing this more than just in social, it's in other different places, like the National Science Foundation, for example. How do you quantify the value of the National Science Foundation giving a researcher a $2 million grant? What's the value of that? Okay? By the way, there's methods to figure this out that have to do with something called network analysis. So this is my oldest example, 1775. Let's put this in context. You mostly all heard of Paul Revere. Everybody heard of Paul Revere? He's the guy that in 1775 got on a horse and rode out of Boston yelling, "The British are coming, the British are coming," just before the Battle of Concord. Well, what you may not know is there was another guy, William Dawes. He went on the same ride at the same time. But the insight is that nobody's heard of William Dawes, but everybody's heard of Paul Revere. Why is that? Well, the why is because Paul Revere's network was fundamentally different than William Dawes. You see, William Dawes, he went town to town, just as Paul Revere did. But when he got to each town and he told people, hey, the British are coming, it turns out that the people he knew in that town, William Dawes, they all knew each other in the network, if that makes sense. So it was a closed network. Paul Revere, on the other hand, he went town to town and he told people, and all the people he knew a lot of other people that he didn't know. What happened is the news spread very, very rapidly. So what's the implication here? The implication of a social network is, especially for marketing, if you want to do word of mouth social marketing, this network is great, man. It's going to travel like wildfire. But if you got that network, it ain't going to work. So what is that saying? It's saying if you understand the network, it's going to help you think about what the marketing mix should be to go after and get the maximum number of acquisitions. So specifically, social media, virally type stuff is going to work great for this one. But you know what here? Impression marketing is probably going to do better. You know, impression advertising to get the message out. Okay. So here's some insights. This is from my friends at Havas Digital. And just really, really like this. This is actually analyzing social networks and doing some pretty sophisticated analysis, doing some cluster analysis to figure out what channels do people actually use to make decisions to purchase. So you've got all your customers. How many of them really rely on word of mouth? Or how many of them just go and search? You know, how many do that? Or how many actually pick up a magazine to look at an ad or what have you? So my point is this, by doing this cluster analysis, you're able to understand the network and now do different kinds of segmentation with different targeting where you understand that the search people, they're like, in this case, it's a high-value consumers. They actually like a combination of social and display. They're also very digital in nature. They love that stuff, right? You know, whereas, you know, you got your price comparison people, you know, frankly, I don't really even want to be marketing to them. I really don't want to waste my marketing dollars over there. Anyway, the idea being that, you know, different clusters of consumers in different network enable you to think very, very differently about how you segment the market and how you then take that multi-channel marketing mix where search is a piece of it and you put it all together. So again, nerdy academics, you can do this for researchers who get grants, and you can see how many people reference the the researcher and how the connectivity is. I don't have one of those pictures, but it's pretty amazing. You find that there's just a few researchers in each field that have this phenomenal impact, and then there's everybody else. So, 5 ideas in 25 minutes. We're running exactly on time. We started with motivation, that you're living in very, very difficult times. But you know what? Markets are made in the downturn. The opportunity is now. Now, the senior leaders I talked to, very senior chief marketing officers, you know, the discussion is how are you going to increase your marketing investment, not decrease your marketing investment when things go south. We talked about the marketing divide, the difference between the leaders and the laggards. The leaders fundamentally spend their marketing dollars differently. They spend less on demand generation marketing. By the way, that's like search. They spend more on branding, building customer relationships, and they spend more on infrastructure to support data-driven marketing. These companies get better financial return. They get better sales growth. They got a better brand equity. They got better customer equity. They got better long-term shareholder equity than competitors. So my point is, it really works. Then we talked about 3 major trends that as a search marketer is working in a marketing organization can fundamentally, you know, are going to impact you if they're not already. Big data being one. I gave you an example so you know what it looks like, but fundamentally it is sifting through those gobs of customer data and doing very, very fine-grained segmentation and targeting so that the customer gets a, wow, that's exactly what I need, experience. We talked about agile marketing, this idea that you want to design your campaigns to be measured. It's a multi-channel campaign. Yes, search is a piece of that. You know what? If it's not working, fix it. Stop. And we have to think holistically about the campaign. Maybe we got to put more money on search. Maybe we got to take more money off of search. But we got to, early on, is it working or not? If yes, let's put more money in. If no, let's fix it. You know what? If it's really not working, we should stop. Try something else. Huge performance gains versus just running the campaign and coming back later and say, so how'd it go? And finally, the next level of social is to fundamentally understand networks and how they interact. And there, the example of Paul Revere's ride versus William Dawes. There's a fundamental reason that Paul Revere is in the history books and William Dawes is not. So with that, it has been my absolute pleasure. Thank you, and I think maybe it's time just for a few questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, let me just get a mic over there.
So the examples that you provided in eBay's case and in Land's End case would seem to be more at the demand generation or demand harvesting side of things, either existing customers getting very relevant flyers or existing visitors to eBay being profiled based on lookalike models or something like that. Are other people using the big data resources effectively to also tune their demand creation, branding advertising, the stuff that allows them to charge a premium for what would otherwise be a commodity?
And the answer is absolutely yes. The work that I've seen, you guys are actually more embedded in search than I am, right? So you're experts at what you do. I'm experts at what I do, right? So the answer is yes. So in the book, I talk about the attribution modeling work that Havas has done, others have done, the idea of understanding the search journey, and then we're going to plant the cookies and stuff, and then target to that. But I think what I'm seeing, maybe you have a different perspective. I'm seeing that very few organizations right now are really taking advantage of that. I think there's a huge opportunity there. Traditionally, the consensus has been that brand marketing, we can't measure that, which brand marketing would be the early part of the funnel. I think that is changing. It's changing that there's going to be a Twitter tag, there's going to be a URL or what have you, some kind of call to action there that I can now track and tag that in my database. And to your point now, target actual purchasing journeys versus last click type attribution, which is what we were talking about. But by the way, why the examples are more demand gen is it's much easier to quantify the demand gen stuff. So that's where you get the really hard quantifiable numbers, which by the way makes your job a lot easier because you can show the value. All right, one more question, last question. Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Joanna O'Connell from Forrester. I think the challenge for a lot of these guys is that they are managing search budgets only, and it feels like the biggest barrier to agile marketing is organizational change.
Right. Oh, that's a great question. So, as an aside, I early drafts of the book, and I'm showing it to my editor, and he goes, "Mark, this is great, but there's a problem here. All your friends are really smart." And so you tell all these stories that are brilliant about, how to do this great marketing. For the average person, which is kind of your question, average person who's in the trenches, what do you do? How can you have an impact? How does that work? So I actually took that to heart, and I went back and I re-interviewed everybody that's in the book, and there's some just fabulous stories in there. But the theme is this. You can have incredible impact in your organization. You can impact everybody that works for you. You can impact everybody that is your peer, okay? And you can impact, at the very least, one level up in the management. And so the story that I heard very consistently about very, very successful marketers, they started at the lower level, at the director level. They personally took initiative, which, by the way, was risky, okay? But they reached out to people who were like-minded as them and they helped coordinate the data problem. So they said, look, if I have this data plus this, what's the 1 plus 1 that would equal 10? They all answered that question. And they found somebody who had the data. You know what? If I put that data together with my data, that's 10. They executed. They got the success. By the way, then they got to be a hero. You know, it's a snowball effect because you get one win, then you get the next and the next, and everybody wants to be around a winner. Nobody wants to hang with a loser. So my advice to you and all of you is that really you can do this. Don't be constrained by just saying that you're in the bucket of search marketing. You are a marketer. You are a digital marketer. You're on the cutting edge. And from that perspective, you can add value in very senior meetings to say, hey, maybe there's a better way here. And by the way, it's not just search. It's multi-channel marketing, which this whole conference is about. Anyway, it's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, and thanks for the invite, Rob.
Thanks, Mark. So